It was a quiet Saturday morning when I stepped out onto our porch, coffee in hand, the warm smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air. My wife, Rachel, was inside, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. Life in our new neighborhood had been peaceful for the most part, but lately, the peace was getting cracks. Cracks shaped exactly like our neighbor across the street, Karen. Karen was the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, always strutting around with her clipboard, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was guarding the gates of heaven. She had made it clear from the day we moved in that she didn't like us. She didn't like the color of our mailbox, the height of our grass, or even the fact that we parked in our own driveway. At first, we brushed it off. We'd seen people like her before, people who needed power like oxygen. But over the last month, her behavior had grown bolder. She'd stand at the edge of our yard, taking pictures of our house. She'd drop violation notices in our mailbox, claiming ridiculous things like grass shade not matching neighborhood tone. The latest notice accused us of having an unauthorized vehicle, our own family SUV. Rachel laughed when she saw it, but I saw the spark in her eyes. She wasn't someone you pushed too far. Rachel was calm and composed, but under that calm was steel. She had a career that demanded authority, and while she didn't brag, I knew one day someone like Karen would regret underestimating her. Still, that morning we had no idea just how far Karen would go. We were eating breakfast when a loud knock echoed through the house. I opened the door, and there she was, hands on hips, face flushed. "You've been warned enough," she snapped. "This is your final notice. If your wife doesn't vacate the property by tonight, I'll have the police remove her." I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, you can't just evict someone because you don't like them." Her lips tightened. "We'll see about that." She stormed off, and I shrugged it off until I saw her pulling out her phone, already dialing. I had no idea she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The day dragged on, and I could feel Rachel growing annoyed. She had work to do. Important work. But Karen's nonsense had a way of getting under anyone's skin. Rachel had spent years working her way up in law enforcement. She didn't wear her badge around the neighborhood, didn't flaunt her title, but her role wasn't just any role. She was the state police force's chief of operations. That meant every officer in the state technically answered to her. But Karen didn't know that. She saw Rachel as just another neighbor she could bully. By mid-afternoon, Karen's social media posts had already started. Our neighbor across the street texted me a screenshot. "Problem neighbors, refusing to follow HOA rules. Police will be involved, justice will be served." Her little group of followers was already cheering her on. It would have been funny if it weren't so ridiculous. Around 4 p.m., Rachel came into the living room with that calm, serious look she gets when she's planning something. "She's calling the cops," she said simply. "Good," I replied. "Let her dig her own hole." Rachel smiled faintly. "Oh, she will." At 5:12 p.m., we heard the sirens. 2 patrol cars rolled into the neighborhood, lights flashing. Karen was already outside waving her arms like she'd just caught a fugitive. She pointed at our house, shouting something to the officers. I could see the younger officer's confused expression. The older one kept a neutral face. Rachel didn't flinch. She stepped outside, her posture relaxed, her voice calm as she said, "Good evening, officers. What seems to be the issue?" Karen jumped in before they could answer. "This woman is illegally occupying this property. I'm the HOA president. I'm ordering you to remove her immediately." One of the officers blinked, then looked at Rachel. "Ma'am, do you have identification?" Rachel reached into her wallet and handed over her state-issued ID, the kind only a handful of people carry. The officer's eyes widened slightly, then darted to his partner. Karen, oblivious, kept ranting about HOA bylaws. She had no idea that the ground beneath her was about to disappear. The senior officer handed Rachel's ID back with a subtle nod. "Understood, ma'am," he said with respect, that Karen didn't seem to notice. "We'll handle this." Karen crossed her, arms scoffing. "Well, remove her. This is private HOA business, and she's in violation of—" "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, his tone sharper now. "HOA bylaws are not criminal law. We don't evict people on your say-so." Karen's face turned red. "Are you refusing to enforce the law?" "No," he said slowly. "We're enforcing the law that actually exists." Rachel stayed quiet, letting them go back and forth. She didn't need to defend herself. Every second Karen spoke, she made herself look worse. Eventually, the officer turned back to Rachel. "Would you like to file a harassment report?" Rachel tilted her head. "Not yet," she said softly. "Let's give her one more chance to walk away." Karen exploded. "This is outrageous! I'll call your supervisor." The senior officer's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "You're welcome to, but you might want to find out who she is first." Something in his tone made Karen pause, but only for a moment. She pointed at Rachel, shaking with fury. "This isn't over." She spun on her heel and marched back to her house. The officers nodded to Rachel, gave her a respectful "Evening, ma'am," and left. For a brief moment, I thought that was the end of it. But Karen wasn't the type to admit defeat, and Rachel, she wasn't the type to keep letting someone poke the bear. The real storm hadn't even started yet. That night, the air in our neighborhood felt heavy. Karen's porch light stayed on, and every now and then her curtains shifted, revealing her watchful glare. Rachel and I sat in the living room, the TV on low, though neither of us was paying much attention. "She's not done," Rachel murmured. "People like her never are." I knew she was right. By morning, there were 2 more violation notices taped to our door. The first was a demand to remove unauthorized lawn decorations, our flower pots. The second was a final warning claiming Rachel had until 6 p.m. to vacate the property. This time, Karen had signed it with an official-looking HOA stamp, as if it was a legal eviction order. Rachel read it calmly, then set it on the counter without a word. She made herself coffee, took a slow sip, and said, "Okay. If she calls again, I'll let the truth come out." Around noon, I noticed Karen pacing in her driveway on the phone. She was talking fast, gesturing wildly, her voice sharp, even from across the street. At 5:55 p.m., right on cue, the wail of sirens returned. But this time, it wasn't just 2 patrol cars. 4 cruisers rolled in, lights blazing. Karen ran to meet them like she was welcoming VIP guests, pointing and shouting before they even stopped. I could see the officers exchanging glances. Rachel stepped outside, hands in her jacket pockets, looking calm but unshakable. The lead officer approached, his tone professional but cautious. "Ma'am, we've received a complaint of unlawful occupancy." Karen jumped in. "Yes, arrest her. She's trespassing in my neighborhood." The officer's brow furrowed. "And your authority to remove her is—" Karen lifted her chin. "I'm the HOA president. That's all the authority I need." The officer's jaw tightened. "That's not how this works." Rachel finally spoke, her voice low and even. "Officer, may I show you something?" She handed him her ID again, but this time she also gave him her badge. It wasn't a local precinct badge, it was a state police command badge. The officer straightened instantly. "Chief," he said quietly. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, confusion flickering across her face. Rachel smiled faintly. "Now, let's talk about unlawful harassment." Karen's eyes darted between Rachel, the badge, and the officer. This is a joke," she stammered. "She's making that up." The officer's voice was firm now. "Ma'am, I can assure you this is not a joke. You've been making repeated calls for non-criminal matters, wasting police resources, and issuing false eviction notices." Karen took a step back, shaking her head. No. You don't understand. She's violating HOA. HOA rules are not state law, Rachel interrupted, still calm. And what you've done crosses into harassment and false reporting. The younger officer spoke up. Chief, would you like us to file an official report tonight? Rachel's eyes didn't leave Karen's face. Yes, but I'd also like to give her the opportunity to stop before this escalates further. Karen laughed nervously. You can't scare me. I know my rights. Rachel stepped closer, her voice still soft but laced with authority. So do I, Karen. I've been enforcing them for 25 years. The officers began writing in their notebooks as Karen's confidence visibly crumbled. Neighbors had started gathering on porches, whispers rippling through the street. Karen glanced around, realizing this wasn't the private victory she'd imagined. It was a very public unraveling. The officers took her statement, though it was mostly incoherent, then asked Rachel if she'd like a restraining order. Not yet, she said again. Let's see if she's smart enough to stop. But Rachel's eyes told me she didn't expect that to happen. And she was right. The following week was tense. Karen stopped pacing the street but started sending letters instead. Long, rambling messages accusing us of everything from lowering neighborhood values to undermining HOA authority. Rachel documented every one of them. She'd been patient, but there was a limit. On Friday, the limit was reached. Another letter arrived, but this one was different. It claimed Rachel owed the HOA thousands in back dues and threatened to place a lien on our home. That crossed a legal line. Rachel's patience snapped, not in anger, but in the quiet, deliberate way only a true professional can. That evening, she made a single phone call. The next morning, 3 unmarked state police vehicles arrived. Officers in plain clothes stepped out, speaking briefly with Rachel before knocking on Karen's door. From across the street, we could hear her indignant voice, but it didn't last long. Within minutes, she was outside, her face pale, talking rapidly to the officers. They weren't local cops. These were investigators. And they were very interested in Karen's use of HOA funds, which Rachel had quietly looked into during the week. It turned out Karen's harassment wasn't her only crime. As the investigators questioned her, Karen's voice grew quieter. The neighbors who had once cheered her on were now standing in clusters, watching the scene unfold. Whispers turned into open conversations about her years of controlling behavior, her fines for petty violations, and rumors of HOA money being spent on personal luxuries. The lead investigator handed her a folder. These are subpoenas for financial records, he said. Failure to comply will result in charges. Karen tried to protest, but her words came out in broken stammers. Rachel stayed on our porch, arms crossed, just watching. This wasn't revenge, it was accountability. Karen's eyes flicked to our house, and for the first time since we'd moved in, she didn't look angry. She looked afraid. The officers left after 20 minutes, leaving Karen standing alone on her lawn. She disappeared inside, curtains snapping shut. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. But Karen wasn't quite finished. She had one last move to make, and it would seal her fate completely.